The morning of my wedding felt quieter than it should have. Not quiet in a peaceful way, but like something had been left unsaid for too long, and now it was hovering in the air, waiting to be noticed. The venue sat beside the river, breeze soft, the late summer sun casting a golden haze on the water. My dress was one I designed myself, simple, structured, and something I didn't need approval on. I stood by the full-length mirror, adjusting a fold near the hip, then turned away. Approval was never going to come from them, anyway. Rowan came up behind me and gently squeezed my shoulder. Still no word? I shook my head, phone in hand. No calls, no texts. I already knew better, but I kept checking. Like some part of me hadn't given up on the idea that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me today. It's not a big wedding, I said aloud, not really to him, but I hope it's big enough for them to care. He didn't respond. Just kissed the top of my head and left me to finish getting ready. 1 week before the wedding, I sent the invitation again. No RSVP, no acknowledgement, just silence. And then, 2 days later, a text from my father. We'll try to make it. They'd used that phrase for everything. Birthdays, graduations, my first art exhibit in college. We'll try was their way of saying no without ever having to say it. Still, I printed their name cards. Reserved 2 seats at the front, center aisle, best view. I even folded a napkin into a daisy, tucked it under the place setting, the same little flower I used on their wedding invite. Maybe I was too sentimental, or maybe I was just holding on to something that never existed. Nicole, my best friend, once told me, "You're always saving chairs for people who won't sit with you." She wasn't wrong, but I had to save them anyway, because if I didn't, I'd have to admit I was never really part of the picture. The music started. Light piano, soft and familiar. I took a breath and stepped forward, 1 step, then another. I kept my chin up, eyes ahead. But somewhere in that split second before reaching the middle, I glanced at the front row. Their seats were empty. I saw the name cards, perfectly centered. The ribbon I had tied with trembling hands. Nothing out of place, except the people who were supposed to be there. A beat skipped inside my chest. Maybe they're stuck in traffic, I thought. Maybe their flight got delayed. Maybe they didn't know the time. But I knew better. I had always known better. Rowan's gaze met mine from the end of the aisle. He was calm, grounded, there, and somehow that was enough to keep me moving. If I just kept walking, maybe I could pretend the absence wasn't there. Maybe I could trick myself into thinking it didn't matter anymore. The reception was beautiful, warm. Rowan's parents made toasts that made people laugh and tear up. The cake was perfect. Nicole danced barefoot with her girlfriend under the string lights, wine glasses swinging in hand. But my eyes kept drifting. To the front row, to the 2 chairs no one dared to touch. They sat like ghosts at a feast, visible, untouchable. Nicole noticed. Of course she did. She always does. Without saying anything, she walked over and took one of the chairs away. Just like that, like she was clearing a space that never should have been promised. She came back, stood beside me, her voice low. "You still thought they'd come, didn't you?" I didn't say anything at first. My throat was already burning. Then I whispered, "Just once. I wanted to be the reason they showed up." Delaney never had to wonder about that. My sister was the main character in our parents' lives. When she got married, they flew across the country, hosted a rehearsal dinner with matching napkins, had a hashtag campaign, even hired a videographer. My milestones, they were always nice, not headline-worthy, and not worth a plane ticket. Once on my 25th birthday, I made reservations for dinner. My mom texted at the last minute. "Delaney's fundraiser ran late. We'll make it up to you." They never did. I kept thinking maybe I just hadn't earned it. That if I worked harder, got better reviews, landed bigger clients, made something that went viral, they'd turn their heads. But even my wedding wasn't shiny enough to make them stay. Late that night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the bridal suite. The lights dimmed, makeup half worn off, heels on the floor. The dress hung across a chair like it had given up, too. I pulled out the RSVP list from my clutch, ran my finger over the names. Joseph and Ruth Ann Vaughn, pending. I took out my sketch pad, drew 2 chairs, same style I had used at the ceremony, This time under a spotlight, empty, echoing, waiting for no one. Some people don't need to scream to make you feel invisible. They just don't show up. We got home sometime after 10. The drive back was quiet, not the kind of silence that follows a fight, or even sadness. It was the kind you sit inside when nothing needs to be said because everything already happened, and it happened without you. Rowan parked the car without asking if I wanted to go anywhere else. I didn't. He walked ahead, opened the door, and held it for me without a word. I slipped off my shoes the moment we stepped in. He bent down, picked them up, and placed them gently by the door. I poured myself a glass of wine without looking at him. I don't remember sitting down. Just remember the weight in my legs and the slight pressure in my chest. Not grief, not anger. Something between that numbness where you're not sure if you're exhausted or if your body's just trying to protect you. I picked up my phone, not because I was expecting anything, but because that's what we do. Reflex, scroll, tap, disconnect. A notification blinked on the screen. Vaughn family tagged in a post. Oahu. My thumb moved before my brain did. I tapped. The video played automatically. Joseph and Ruth Ann were on a beach, laughing, holding drinks with little umbrellas in them. Delaney in a white sundress. Jace standing beside her with his arm proudly around her waist. Someone said, "Aloha," in the background. Then Ruth Ann lifted her glass and smiled. "To our real celebration," she said. That's when everything stopped. No one mentioned my name. No one said why they weren't at my wedding, just hours earlier. They were there, laughing, drinking, toasting, while I was staring at empty chairs and tying daisies to napkins like a fool. I didn't move, didn't blink. I wasn't even breathing right. The air felt thick. Rowan walked in and saw the screen. He didn't need to ask. He sat beside me and placed his hand gently on my back. It's funny, the way pain arrives. I thought I'd feel it like a punch. But it didn't hit. It settled. Slowly. Like cold water rising in a tub you didn't realize was filling up until your chest was under. I didn't cry. My body didn't know what to do with the moment, so it did nothing. You'd think after a lifetime of being overlooked, it wouldn't hurt anymore. But that's the trick. You never get used to it. You just get better at pretending you did. They chose her. Every single time. Rowan opened his mouth, but I shook my head. "Don't," I whispered. "I need to feel this first." He didn't push. The apartment stayed quiet. Outside, the city kept moving like it didn't know what had just cracked open inside me. A little past midnight, Nicole's message came through. "Are you okay? I just saw the video." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. I scrolled up to an older message from her, a few weeks back, when she told me, "If they hurt you again, don't let it be quiet." I read that line 4 times. 5. I'd always made it quiet. Always gave them space to step on me without making noise, like a floorboard that learned not to squeak. I thought silence made me strong. But maybe it just made me invisible. The next message came from Mara, Rowan's cousin. She sent a photo. "Found this at their house earlier this week. Thought you should know." It was a picture of my wedding invitation. Crumpled. Sitting on a side table, next to a pair of reading glasses and a coffee-stained coaster. Behind it, on the wall, framed in glass, was Delaney's engagement invitation. Elegant. Centered. I stared at the image for a while. "I wasn't forgotten," I finally said aloud. "I was discarded. That's worse." Rowan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He stood up, turned off the hallway light, and left me alone with my thoughts. The city outside hummed its same quiet rhythm. Somewhere, someone was probably still dancing. Somewhere else, someone else was probably still being celebrated. But not me. Not tonight. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot, still in my wedding dress. The hem was dirty, slightly torn where someone stepped on it earlier. I didn't care. I opened the drawer and pulled out my sketch pad. Sat at the table. The page was blank. I didn't draw. I didn't need lines this time. I wrote one sentence. "They don't get to narrate me anymore." I tore the page clean and pinned it to the fridge. I tried to go back to work the Monday after, sat down with a fresh cup of coffee, opened a blank file on my laptop, and stared at the screen for a full hour without typing a word. Grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's realizing how much you excuse just to feel like you belonged. There's a strange kind of ache in silence. When people fail you quietly, it takes time to notice. But once you do, you start hearing how loud their silence always was. Rowan noticed. He didn't say anything, just suggested, gently, that maybe I should get out of the apartment. Nicole's been asking if you'd meet her. Might help. I agreed, even if I wasn't sure I wanted to be helped. The cafe was half full, mellow jazz in the background, windows streaked with late afternoon light. Nicole waved me over. She was already seated, a pastry half-eaten, coffee untouched. "You look better than I expected," she said, though her eyes searched my face a little too long. I forced a smile. "I fake it for free now." We talked about safe things first, art submissions, client drama, her new apartment. Then she reached into her bag. "Hey, random, but Delaney's wedding planner passed these out at the brunch last week. Thought you'd find it weirdly familiar." She slid a brochure across the table. My stomach turned before I even touched it. I picked it up. My eyes scanned the layout, the font, the margins, the muted peach color blocks I'd spent hours adjusting, the custom floral header, my design. I reached for my phone, pulled up my Google Drive, found the original mock-up from 2 years ago, opened it, laid it side by side. Nicole leaned in, blinked hard. "Wait, they didn't even change it?" I didn't answer. "They changed one thing," I said, tapping the bottom right corner. The credit read, "Creative Direction by Jace Holloway." The words didn't feel real at first, like I was misreading them. But they were there, clear as daylight. His name, right where mine should have been. Nicole looked horrified. Maybe it was an accident, like maybe the printer. No one accidentally removes an artist's name and replaces it with their fiancé's. I said it without raising my voice. Didn't need to. This wasn't just theft. This was erasure, with intention. They didn't steal my work. They took credit for something I bled into, then acted like it was theirs all along. 2 years ago, over lunch at our parents' house, I showed Delaney my sketches. She called them elegant and said I made things look more important than they were. Jace had watched silently that day, arms folded, nodding now and then. He asked about my color theory choices, how I layer transparency in Illustrator. At the time, I thought he was being supportive. He was collecting. I see it now. They took my work like someone taking a family recipe, then adding salt and claiming it as their own. Nicole looked at me, waiting for something. Maybe a breakdown. Maybe a scream. "I'm not going to yell into the void they built," I said, putting my phone away. "But they'll hear me, just not the way they expect." That night, I opened my old files, dug up timestamps, exported PDFs, screenshots of drafts, email threads with Delaney asking for design help just for fun. Then I started a new file. Title, What They Took. It was clean. Side-by-side visuals. Original versus published. Each slide quiet, factual, impossible to argue. I didn't put my name on it. I submitted it to a local design journal anonymously. Just enough traction to whisper the truth in places where they liked to pretend everything was polished and deserved. Rowan found me in the middle of it all, surrounded by printouts, folders, a half-eaten sandwich from hours earlier. "You okay?" "I will be." And for the first time in days, I meant it. I uploaded the last file, closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair. Not vindicated, but clear-headed. Then my phone dinged. New email. Subject, Delaney's bridal celebration. Finalized brochure for print. I opened it. High-res files attached. Even more of my design reused. Same headers, same icon set, same structure. And a message. "Ellery, I hope you're doing okay. Jace had to jump in since you never officially submitted anything. I'm sure you understand." 2 weeks. That's how long it took before the next message came in. This time from Delaney. "Brunch at Jace's parents' place this Sunday. Just family, low-key. Hope you'll come. Let's keep the peace." Rowan read over my shoulder. His brow furrowed like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. I could see it, though. He didn't trust the invitation. Neither did I. But I went anyway. not for reconciliation, not because I was ready to forgive anything. Sometimes you walk into a room not to be welcomed, but to witness what they say when they think you've gone quiet. The house was what I expected, beige and polite. Every flower in the vase arranged just enough to feel sterile. The smell of cinnamon rolls, sprayed linen, and forced friendliness. Jace's mother greeted me with a tight-lipped smile. "You must be Delaney's sister," she said. No name, no context. Throughout the morning, that's all I was. Delaney's sister. People asked what I did in a tone that made it clear they weren't really curious. One man said, "I hear Jace has an incredible design eye. That brochure was sharp." Delaney, standing just beside me, smiled and replied, "He really outdid himself." I kept my face still, smiled, nodded, made a comment about the weather, but inside, something scraped bone. Near the end of the event, people started gathering dishes. I offered to help. Maybe I needed the distraction. Maybe I just wanted something to do with my hands. As I bent down to pick up a tray, a small voice tugged at my sleeve. It was my niece, Delaney's daughter. She looked up at me, all innocence and curly hair. "Are you Mommy's helper?" Time didn't freeze. It cracked. "Something like that," I said, standing up straight. She didn't mean anything by it. She was just a kid. But kids see what they're shown. When you've been erased long enough, even the next generation forgets you were ever meant to be there. I excused myself, made my way to the bathroom, locked the door, and stood in front of the mirror. Almost cried, but didn't. Back home that night, I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through junk mail. Then, a forwarded thread popped up. The subject line read, "Ellery's little artsy moment, so tragic it's sweet." My hand stiffened around the phone. It was from Ruth Ann, meant for someone else. The body of the email read, "At least she didn't make a scene. Let her have her little show. It's harmless." Rowan glanced over. He saw my face before I could hide it. He didn't ask. He just waited. I didn't say anything. I deleted the email, not because it didn't matter, because it mattered too much. I opened my laptop, created a blank document, titled it, "What I Heard While You Thought I Was Silent." And then I started writing, not for them, not out of anger, but because it was time I reclaimed my side of the story. They've been writing over me for years. Smiling while they scribbled me out of the frame. This time, I'd signed my name. I didn't finish the letter, just saved it as a draft and closed the screen. Not angry, just alert. Rowan asked later that evening, "Are you going to say something to them?" "Not yet," I said, "but they're going to feel it when I do." My voice came out even, almost too even. The next day, Mara texted, "Just a heads up," she wrote. "I overheard Jace's mom referring to you as the arts and crafts girl." She laughed, thought it was clever. I stared at the message for a while. Then I typed, "Thanks for the heads up. They're not ready for what I'm building." I opened my sketchbook. Page 1, a long dining table, beautifully set. At the head, 2 chairs, empty. The call came late in the morning. I was rinsing out a mug when my phone buzzed on the counter. Weldon. It had been weeks. Not a word after the wedding. I should have let it go to voicemail, but part of me still answered. His tone was casual, dry, as if we'd spoken just yesterday. "How are things?" he asked. I didn't respond. He continued, unfazed. "Listen, I wanted to touch base about a loan we floated for you back in college. We're needing to settle a few things ahead of Delaney's wedding. Thought this might be the right time for you to contribute." I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, dish towel in hand, staring at nothing. "So," I said slowly, "you skipped my wedding, and now you're sending me the bill for hers?" There was a pause, then he laughed. Not mean, just dismissive. "You got what you wanted, didn't you? A quiet day." That's what he called it, a quiet day. I said nothing more. Just ended the call and stood there in the kitchen until Rowan walked in, noticed the way my hands were clenched, and said nothing. Later, I sat down with my laptop, pulled up every financial record I had, loan receipts, tuition statements, payment histories. I'd paid for it all. Every last cent of college came from freelance projects, late nights, skipped meals, and a stubborn belief that I shouldn't have to ask them for anything. But now they wanted credit for that too. Weldon said they'd sacrificed, that Ruth Ann had tightened the belt so I could graduate. That wasn't sacrifice. That was spin. I found an old email tucked in a forgotten folder. Ruth Ann's words, glowing with pride over Delaney's law school acceptance. "A true investment in our legacy," she wrote. "Not my name, not my effort, just theirs." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, my stomach in knots, not from sadness, but from the cold realization that they'd rewritten the past so well, they actually believed it. That afternoon, I stopped by their house. Ruth Ann had asked me to return a book months ago, and I finally gave in. The visit wasn't planned. I didn't want coffee or conversation, just wanted to leave the book and go. But while waiting in the entryway, I noticed a new photo album sitting on the hall table. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Delaney's engagement, Jace's proposal at the vineyard, Ruth Ann at a charity gala, BBQs, vacations, holiday brunches, 2 full pages of her bridal shower, white balloons, cupcake towers, matching satin robes. No mention of my wedding. No photo. Not even a caption. Nothing. I stood there flipping pages until I felt like I'd been punched. Ruth Ann entered the hallway, wiping her hands with a dish towel. She saw the album. "Oh," she said. "We didn't get any good photos from your day, and you said it was intimate, right?" I didn't answer, just closed the album, placed the borrowed book on top of it, and walked toward the door. There are moments you want to scream, I thought, and moments you realize silence cuts deeper. I didn't say goodbye. That night, back in my apartment, I stood in the kitchen again, same spot where the call had come. I reached for the envelope I'd kept from college, the final loan receipt, taped it beside our wedding photo on the fridge. Proof, not for them, for me. I sat at the table with a notebook and started writing something I'd never send. A letter titled, "The Cost of Being Counted Out." "If you've ever had to pay to prove you were real," I wrote, "you already know this pain." Rowan brought me tea. No questions, no pressure. He sat beside me, and we just sat in it, this strange new quiet that wasn't empty, but full. I looked at him. "This time," I whispered, "I won't let them bankrupt me twice." The envelope was heavier than it looked. It had that ivory sheen you only see on legal paper, the kind people use when they're splitting up assets or laying down final wishes. I knew before I opened it that nothing good ever came on paper like that. Rowan had placed it on the kitchen counter earlier that morning, still unopened. He didn't ask questions, just nodded toward it while pouring his coffee. I waited until he left for work before I peeled the flap back. It was from the family attorney, nothing personal, just the standard package they send out to keep everyone in the loop after a will is finalized. Grandma had passed a few months ago. I figured this was about that. The first few pages looked fine. Legal formalities, introductory paragraphs about assets and transparency. I kept flipping until I saw the distribution chart. Delaney's name appeared again and again. Property, jewelry, the collection of grandmother's oil paintings. Even a few savings accounts I didn't know existed. My name? Nowhere. Not even as an alternate. At the bottom of the page was a footnote. Per adjusted beneficiary instructions dated 2 years prior. I put the paper down. No tears. Just that dull, echoing hollowness in my chest again. When I was 10, I'd drawn a picture of our house and wrote "ours" in big bubble letters at the top. I'd labeled each stick figure with names. Mom, Dad, Delaney, me. I remembered that sketch like it was hanging in front of me again. The law can't break your heart, but the people who sign their names can. Delaney was listed as executor. Ruth Ann and Weldon were listed as the reasoning for adjustments. Everything was neat, tidy, cold. Rowan came home later that evening. I didn't show him the papers until after dinner. He read them in silence and then set them down carefully. "So now it's on paper," he said. 2 days passed before Weldon called. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't bring up the document, not directly. Instead, he said, "We always admired how you did things your own way. You always claimed you wanted to be independent. We respected that." I said nothing. "You chose your path, Ellery," he continued. "We're honoring it." Honoring it. That's what he called it. He wrapped exclusion in a compliment, like a gift nobody asked for. At the end of the call, he added, "You'll understand once you have a family of your own." I almost said it. "I do. You just weren't invited." But I didn't. He hung up thinking he'd done the right thing. That's what scared me most. Later that night, I went digging through old boxes under the bed, found the sketchbook from my childhood. There it was. Page 3. The family house. Stick figures again. Me had a heart over the head. Delaney had a star. Ruth Ann, a crown. Weldon's figure had keys. Even back then, I must have known where I stood. Maybe it was never mine to lose. Just mine to stop chasing. The next morning, Ruth Ann sent a message. "Hope you received the documents. We didn't want to blindside you." No apology, no invitation to talk, just a cold receipt of something I was never even offered. I typed a reply. "You've never blinded me. I was born in your shadow." Then I hit delete, not out of fear, out of power. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's a boundary. That afternoon, I stood in front of the fridge. I took down the photo from the wedding, the one where I looked genuinely happy. Beside it, I pinned a copy of the final loan receipt from college, my proof that I did it on my own. Then I scanned the will, printed it, and taped it beside them both. Above that trio, I placed a new sketch. It was the family house again. Only this time, it was just me and Rowan standing outside. No one else. Caption below. Redefining family. One truth at a time. And I walked away from the wall without looking back. Nicole had asked me to bring something new, not something finished, not something polished, just something honest. I hesitated for days. In the end, I brought a sketch titled Placeholders. 2 ornate chairs, no people, no labels, just space where belonging was supposed to go. The gallery was a small converted warehouse just off the old streetcar line. Raw walls, track lighting, folding chairs in the back. No pretense, just local art, quiet conversation, and people who understood what it meant to create something that might never be seen. Rowan and Mara came with me. Neither said much in the car, didn't need to. I carried the piece in under my arm and set it up myself. No ceremony, no explanation. I didn't want applause, I told myself. I just wanted space where I didn't feel erased. The room slowly filled. People murmured polite hellos, drifted between paintings, sipped wine out of plastic cups. Mara and I stood near the back wall. She looked at my piece longer than most. "I need to say something," she said after a moment. Her voice didn't crack, but it trembled. I waited. "I used to believe what they said about you." She looked down. "I thought you were cold, ungrateful, always starting drama. That's how Ruth Ann always described you. And Delaney, she never contradicted it." I didn't flinch. Mara looked at me. I didn't know I'd been listening to the highlight reel of their narrative. She paused, then added, "I'm sorry." I didn't offer her forgiveness, but I nodded. At least you stopped the story when you knew it was wrong. Maybe truth doesn't always need revenge. Maybe it just needs revision. Later, as more guests arrived, I stood near my piece and watched a stranger sit down on a folding chair just in front of it. He studied the 2 empty chairs in the sketch, then turned to the person beside him, didn't know I was in earshot, and said, "Funny how she even included the empty chairs. Drama runs in the family, huh?" I didn't react, just stood there. Let it land. Nicole stepped forward, lips already parting to say something, but I raised a hand. "Let it be," I said quietly. People who mock pain always reveal their own fear of being ignored. That comment, that throwaway line, it didn't hurt the way it once might have. It just clarified things. That night, I worked late in the studio. Lights dimmed, window cracked open, autumn slipping in. I started a piece called Inheritance. Half-written statements, half-redacted lines, things I was told I couldn't be, things I became anyway. I didn't ask Rowan to bring coffee. He brought it anyway. He sat across from me. Didn't speak. Just watched. I didn't need his words. I just needed his presence. I'd been handing them silence as mercy. Maybe it was time I gave them truth as a mirror. I finished the piece the next morning. No title at the top, just an image. At the bottom, I included a quote from an old email Delaney had sent, cut out her name, left the words, "I hope this finally gives you something to feel proud of." I paired it with the photo of my crumpled wedding invite, side by side, juxtaposed. Nicole looked at it the day after, when I told her I planned to submit it to the Family Fractures exhibit next month. "You sure you're ready to go this public?" she asked. "They've been telling my story for years," I said. "This is just me correcting the credits." A few days passed, then came another email. Group message, Delaney's wedding planning update, sent to a dozen people. I was CC'd, no greeting, no warmth, just tasks and deadlines. Weldon replied all. "Let's make sure this wedding is nothing like the other one." I stared at the screen. My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just closed the laptop. They want a war I never declared. But I'm done letting them draw the map. The message came before sunrise. I was still in bed, halfway between sleep and something heavier, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Mara. It was a screenshot from Reddit, an anonymous post on a design thread. 2 images side by side, my original portfolio layout and the wedding brochure Delaney had published. Same fonts, same spacing, same muted peach tone. Even the little emblem I'd designed into the corner, copied, pixel for pixel. The caption read, "This looks like stolen work. Thoughts?" I stared at it, unsure whether to cry, laugh, or just close my eyes again and pretend it hadn't happened. But the comments kept coming in. "This designer deserves credit." "Wow, that's low." "Tag the real artist." Something shifted, not in me, in the room, in the weight of all the silence I'd carried. Rowan looked over my shoulder. He didn't say much, just one thing. "You didn't yell. You created. That's why it's powerful." By mid-morning, the thread had gone viral. Design Forums picked it up. A small ethics blog reposted it. A few old classmates tagged my portfolio website in the comments. Nicole called, half out of breath. "Your silence just made the loudest noise in town." That afternoon, I got an email from a local gallery. They wanted to offer me a solo exhibit under the theme Family Fractures. Said my recent submission was exactly what the community needed. I didn't feel victorious, just seen. "I wasn't waiting to be seen," I whispered. "I just stopped hiding." Later that evening, Mara sent me another post. This one from a different account. Photo taken at Delaney's rehearsal dinner. It was a chair with a name tag, hand-lettered, framed in gold trim. It read, "Reserved for Mrs. Ruthson." Someone commented, "Who's that? The bride's mom or her sister?" Another reply, "Y'all, that was meant to be a jab. No way that's a mistake." I said nothing publicly, but I saved the image to my phone. Ruth Ann emailed me the next day. "We're being unfairly judged because you won't clarify the situation." That was her way of saying, "Fix what we broke," quietly. Delaney posted a vague update on Instagram. People forget what family means until they want followers. Jace deleted every trace of himself online, then issued a one-line apology in a design newsletter, blaming the mix-up on miscommunication. I never said a word to any of them. Instead, I submitted inheritance and placeholders to the gallery, under my name, fully visible. You don't fight lies by yelling louder. You fight them by standing where truth echoes longest. Opening night came faster than I expected. The exhibit was simple, clean white walls, warm lighting. People moved through the space slow, quiet, like they were walking through someone's memory. My final piece sat in the back room, a single chair drawn in charcoal, a tag taped above it, "Reserved for Mrs. Ruthson." No figure, just the chair. People stared at it longer than the rest. One woman, older, wearing a red scarf and trembling hands, stopped beside me. She leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for saying what some of us never could." I didn't cry, just nodded. It wasn't revenge. It was remembrance. 2 nights later, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter. Not to my family, not to anyone specific, just to the ones who had watched me disappear and never said a thing. You can't control who writes your past, I wrote, but you can decide who authors your next chapter. I posted it to my website. Quietly, no share buttons, no comment section, just truth. I didn't send it to Ruth Ann, or Delaney, or Weldon. They'd never read it anyway. That night, Rowan came home with a bottle of cider and 2 glasses. He poured one, handed it to me, and said, "To the fire you never started." I raised my glass. "I didn't burn the house down," I said. "I just opened all the windows." The message came like it always did, dry, impersonal, and just vague enough to dodge accountability. "Hope you've processed everything. Let's all move on for the holidays." Ruth Ann didn't even sign her name, just hit send like she was closing a business transaction. I read it 3 times, not for clarity, but to remind myself it really existed. That even in their attempt at closure, I still wasn't invited to be part of it. They weren't moving on. They were moving past me. That's not the same thing. I didn't reply, didn't write a draft, didn't scream. I deleted it and felt nothing, not sadness, not rage, just done. That night, Rowan noticed the stillness in me, the kind that used to mean a storm was coming, but now just meant I was clearing debris. He asked if I was all right. I nodded, then said, "I kept thinking they'd see the whole picture if I just framed it better." But some people look through windows only to admire their own reflection. We sat on the couch, legs touching but not tangled, and talked about family. The kind we build, the kind we're born into, and the kind we grow out of. Rowan shared a quote he'd heard once, Toni Morrison, I think. "Definitions belong to the definers, not the defined." I let that sit between us for a long while. They can keep their definitions. I'm not fixing the story anymore. I'm just not part of theirs. The next morning, I took a walk. Same park I used to sketch in when I was a teenager, sitting on that chipped wooden bench by the pond. It hadn't changed much. Same creaking boards, same geese patrolling the shoreline like security guards. I remembered sitting there at 16, drawing our house and putting halos over everyone's heads, everyone but mine. This time, I took out my sketch pad and drew only one figure. Me, not bowed, not erased, upright, present, still here. I signed the bottom corner, first and last name, no edits, bold ink. The exhibit closed 2 weeks later. Quiet success, good press, just enough murmurs to keep people curious. I stayed until the last hour on the final day, watched strangers stand in front of placeholders and inheritance, whispering things to each other like they'd walked through the same rooms I had, and finally found the light switch. Online, the praise came without tags, anonymous, but real. One comment stuck with me. "This made me feel less invisible. Whoever made it, thank you." I didn't reply, just bookmarked it. I didn't need a platform. I needed a mirror. And for the first time in years, I didn't look away from my own reflection. Rowan and I started looking at houses. Nothing fancy, just something ours. No group text, no family announcements, no obligatory invites. Just 2 people building something quiet, something rooted. Nicole dropped by one evening with a pie and sarcasm in equal measure. She saw the sketch still taped to our fridge, the one of Rowan and me outside the family house. She stared at it, smiled, and said, "It's different now. Same lines, but it breathes." I finally said it aloud. "I think I'm done chasing love that needs to be earned." Rowan took my hand. "You never had to," he said. "You just didn't know that yet." There was nothing left to argue with. Later that week, while going through a client folder, I saw it. The daisy. Same simple flower I'd sketched on the corners of my wedding invitation, now part of a logo for a wellness retreat I'd been hired to brand. I accepted the project, not because of what it meant back then, but because it's just a flower now. Just a flower. I walked by the house once more before winter hit. Didn't slow down, didn't stop. Just passed by and smiled at the closed gate. Some names are left out of stories not because they weren't important, but because the wrong people were writing them.